Good morning. Today's daf is daf Tes Vav. We left off yesterday with a cliffhanger. So let me share my screen and we will get started. Yesterday, we asked the question, which Rebbe Yehuda is it that, what's the source for the statement that our Mishnah and as described by Rav Huna, in the name of Rav Chia Bar Rav, in the name of Rav, which statement of Rabbi Yehuda is consistent with the statement that we made, which was that in our Mishnah we said that an animal slaughtered on Shabbos or Yom Kippur is kosher, even though you slaughtered it on Yom Kippur or Shabbos, and therefore would potentially be subject to the death penalty. It's still going to be kosher. And Rav Huna, quoting Rabbi Chia Bar Rav, who said it in the name of Rav, said that even though it's kosher, you can't eat it on Shabbos. So why can't you eat it on Shabbos? So we said it's like Rabbi Yehuda. So we said yesterday we gave three efforts at answering this question, all based on the concept of muksa, that somehow this would be set aside. But in the end, based on the questioning of Abaye, significantly, it turned out that none of them really worked. And so now, as we pick up with the third line on Tesvav Amud Aleph, we offer the fourth and final explanation, this one changing the concept of what we're talking about. Ella Amar of Ashi, Rabbi Yehuda de Mevashalhi. It's Rabbi Yehuda's statement that he made in connection with cooking. And again, here as well, the Masoras Hashas changes the Ditnan to Ditanya because we're really citing a Brisa, not a Mishnah. Hamivashel b'Shabbos, if you cook on Shabbos, b'Shogeg Yochal, if you do it accidentally, you forgot that it was Shabbos, and you did some cooking, it is totally, then you can still eat what you cooked. The mazid lo yochal. But if you did it intentionally, you cannot eat. Let's take a look at Rashi, second line in the narrow lines of Rashi on Tezvav Amud Aleph, and we're going to do two Rashis. So yochal hu atzmo, the person himself who said that they were going to that they did it by accident. I'm muting you, Ken, because there's a lot of background noise. Huatzmo, he himself, the person who cooked by accident, can eat it. Ubo bayom, and he can even eat it on Shabbos. Ve'ein tzorich lahamtin ad hayarv. He doesn't have to wait until nightfall, until after Shabbos. B'kadesh yasu, and the amount of time that it would take to have cooked the item. Dahada Amrin and Ba'alma, because when we generally say La'erev B'Kadesh Yasu, that you have to wait until the evening and the amount of time that it would have taken to do the action, Leis Leila Rebbe Meir, that is not going to be Rebbe Meir's opinion. And I should have just added in the Gemara, Divrei Rebbe Meir. That's what Rebbe Meir says. That's we're now on back in the Gemara, sixth line, Divrei Rebbe Meir. These are the B'Shogeg Yochal and B'Mezid Lo Yochal, Divrei Rebbe Meir. That's Rebbe Meir's view, that when a person cooks by accident himself, he can eat it even immediately on Shabbos, and when he cooks intentionally, so then he cannot. So Ella Hechad Avad Yisrael Isur Ubamezid, that the only time that Rabbi Meir would say that you have to wait is when the Jew did the sin by intentionally. And then you have to wait until after Shabbos. De'ika chiyuva, because then there is some aspect of liability. Delo nimte hanam isura, because we don't want to get benefit from the illegal action that was done. But according to Rabbi Meir, when it's only a shogeg, we're not going to say that. Continuing on, b'mezid, de'ika isura, continuing in Rashi, that is, when it's done intentionally, and therefore there is an actual prohibition, lo yochal, then he shouldn't eat it. Bo bayom, on that day. He can't eat it that day, ad shetichshach, until tonight. Upagadei shiyasu. And you have to also wait after Shabbos the amount of time that it takes to prepare that food. And all the same rule would also apply to others, meaning one might have thought that Rebbe Meir would be even more lenient for others, but no, he has the same rule with respect to everyone. If it's b'shogeg, you can eat it right away. If it's b'mezid, you have to wait until after Shabbos. Nami, v'hu adin la'acherim nami, and the same rule is true for other people. De'aser lemichle bo bayom. They are not allowed to be fed it on that day. D'taima mishum delo nimtei hanam isura. The same reasoning applies. That the point is that we don't want to allow people to benefit from the prohibition. But when you wait until nightfall, and you wait until after the amount of time that it would have taken to prepare the food, lo matilo hana mine. You're not getting any benefit from the fact that it was cooked on Shabbos. In fact, you're losing benefit from the fact that it was cooked on Shabbos because it was cooked earlier. You're not getting fresh food. V'aidi detana reisha b'didei. And why do we specifically focus on the guy himself? Well, because we mentioned Yochal in the case of Shogeg, that he himself has the ability to eat it on Shabbos when he cooks it b'shogeg. Well, so that's why Dashmin and Rebusa Latera, because that is a clear added aspect of being lenient, of being permissive. So Tananami Seifa B'didei. So in the end, we also ruled in connection with that, even though really we should be teaching the more strict rule of associated with the other people, that we might have thought that they would be more lenient than himself, but no. But as a result of teaching the rule, when the beginning of the rule with respect to the person himself, so too with respect to the end rule of B'mezid, will teach it with respect to the person himself. So again, that was all Divrei Rebbe Meir. Back into the Gemara, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, last 3 words on the line. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and this is of course the key aspect because we are citing this for Rabbi Yehuda's position. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, b'shogeg yochal b'motzei Shabbos. If you cooked it inadvertently and you didn't realize that it was Shabbos or you didn't realize that it was prohibited and you did it, well then you can eat it on Motzei Shabbos. After Shabbos is over. And again, the presumption is and Kadesh Yasu, and you have to also wait the amount of time that it would take, according to Rashi, for it to be prepared. B'mezid, but if you did it intentionally, lo yochal olami, you can never eat it. So, Rabbi, and again, the point is that when we say this, take a look at Rashi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shogeg yochal b'motzei Shabbos v'lo b'Shabbos v'hu adin la'achrine, and the same rule applies to other people. And so, as a result, the bottom line is that nobody is going to be able to eat it on Shabbos. Da'afal gata b'shogeg Chiyuv skila leka, that even though there is no obligation, there's no penalty of skila, aveira miha there is still a sin. When you do a sin b'shogeg, there is still a sin. Ube'inan, and therefore you need b'kadesh yasu. You have to wait until after the Shabbos and after the amount of time that it would have taken to prepare the dish. Delo nimte hana me'aveira, because we don't want you to get benefit from an aveira. But Aidi Dubai Lemasne Seifa Lo Yochal Olamit Bididei. And since when we're talking about not eating it ever, we're talking about the guy himself. Aval Achrine, but eating for other people, Shari, it would be permitted. De'ihu de'avid isura kansua rabbanan, because the person who violated Shabbos is going to get penalized by the rabbis. Aval achrine, but other people, they're not going to get penalized, and they are going to be able to eat it after Shabbos. So Tana Reishanami b'didei. So that's why, even though there's a different rule between the person himself and other people, we're going to tell you the rule. Rabbi Yehuda is telling us the rule with respect to the person himself. Umas Nisen, and our Mishnah, which says that everybody can eat an animal that was slaughtered on Shabbos, Nami Dikatani, Asura be'achila liyomei. It's telling us that on that day you cannot eat it. Lidi day ulachrini, for him and others. And bishogig metukma. And we're going to say that our Mishnah is talking about a bishogig situation. Rebbe Yehudahi. And we're going to say that it's Rebbe Yehuda. Now, the rest of this Rashi is going to highlight what's about to come in the Gemara, namely that we're going to ask some questions. So I'm going to pause there in the Rashi and go back into the Gemara, and we'll get a third view, right? Now, again, the third view is not necessarily relevant, although, again, we will ask about it. But the third view, is now on the 8th line, middle of the line. Rabbi Yochanan Hassanler Omer, Rabbi Yochanan Hassanler says that b'shogeg yochal l'motzei Shabbos, if in fact it was done inadvertently, it can be eaten after Shabbos. B'mezid lo yochal olamit. I'm sorry. B'shogeg yochal l'motzei Shabbos la'cherim below lo. That when it comes to the person himself, even after Shabbos, you cannot eat it. B'mezid lo yochal olamit lo below acherim. And if you did it intentionally, well, then not only can the person himself not eat, but no one can eat at all. So again, very clearly, our Mishnah can fit with the Rebbe Yehuda of this statement. But now we're going to ask v'nokma b'mezid Rebbe Meir. How do you know our Mishnah is in fact like a Rebbe Yehuda? Maybe our Mishnah is talking about a mazid situation, and it's Rebbe Meir. Because what did Rebbe Meir say? Rebbe Meir said, "B'mazid lo yochal," and we said you can't eat it. And Rashi explained that what we mean is you can't eat it on that day, but you can eat it after Shabbos. So that seems also to be consistent with the statement of Rav Huna in the name of Rav and our Mishnah. So why don't we say that our Mishnah is Rebbe Meir? Lo sakataitik. You can't think that. The katani dumya de Yom HaKippurim. Because we said on some level it's connected to Yom Kippur. Ma Yom HaKippurim lo shna b'shogeg v'lo shna b'mezid lo achil. We categorize together slaughtering on Shabbos and slaughtering on Yom Kippur. And on Yom Kippur, whether you slaughtered it b'shogeg, whether you slaughtered it b'mezid, doesn't matter. Nobody's allowed to eat it on Yom Kippur itself because it's Yom Kippur and you can't eat. So av hakanami. So too here when we're talking about Shabbos. Lo shna b'shogeg, lo shna b'mezid. We have lo achil. It has to be that our Mishnah is dealing with a situation with doesn't matter how you killed it, whether you killed it intentionally or whether realizing that you were doing a sin or not realizing that you were doing a sin. The answer is on Shabbos you can't eat it. And that is not consistent with Rebbe Meir, because Rebbe Meir says that on Shabbos, if you do it b'shogeg, you can eat it on Shabbos. So it's not consistent. So that doesn't fit with our Mishnah. So as a result, umimotzes mukma la b'shogeg Rebbe Yehuda. All right, so now you're saying that you're going to tell me that the Mishnah is b'shogeg and it's like Rebbe Yehuda. But once again, our Mishnah specifically says that it's talking about even though the person is liable to the death penalty. That shows that it's b'mezid. So maybe you're wrong with your drasha of a few moments ago to say that it's Yom Kippur and Shabbos are together. No, hachikamar. No, our earlier drasha that we're saying that Shabbos and Yom Kippur should have the similar law, that it doesn't make what difference whether it's mezid or b'shogeg, you can't eat it on Shabbos. It has to go according to both shogeg and mezid because hachikamar. This is what our Mishnah is saying. Afal pi b'mezid mischayev benafsho, who, even though he would be liable for the death penalty if he did it intentionally, hacha de b'shogeg shchitaso kshera. Here, where he did it accidentally, he did it without realizing that he was violating Shabbos, the slaughter is going to be valid. Well, why not say that it's like Rabbi Yochanan Hassanler rather than Rabbi Yehuda? After all, the Amar lo shna b'shogeg, v'lo shna b'mezid, lo achil. He says doesn't make a difference whether it's b'shogeg or b'mezid. You can't eat it on Shabbos itself. So that's very consistent with our Mishnah as well. Rabbi Yochanan Asandler kemaflig b'motzei Shabbos. He disagrees with respect to after Shabbos. La'acherim v'lo lo. He only, when it's mezid, he only allows other people to eat it. I'm sorry, when it is, yes, when it is b'mezid, no, I'm sorry. Even when it's b'shogeg, he does not let the person himself eat it. And so as a result, that is a distinction that is not referenced in our Mishnah. Tana didan, shchita so ksheira ktani. Our Tana says that the slaughter is kosher, period. Lo shna lo, v'lo shna le'acherim. And he doesn't distinguish. And so as a result, we have to say that our Mishnah is talking about shogeg according to Rabbi Yehuda. And it doesn't fit perfectly with either Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Yochanan Hassanler. And
well, so, one question here.
Please.
We talked about shchita and whether shchita is kashera and whether you can eat it or not, right?
That's what we're talking about. Okay. When you shecht it on Shabbos.
Right. So here's my question. Now, he can't, he's shechting the cow, the animal. And then we talked about whether you can eat it, but doesn't he have to cook it first? Isn't there an issur of cooking on Shabbat? Are we skipping a step?
Excellent question. And the answer is that we are assuming that the eating that we're talking about is a chewing of the animal in its raw state, and eating some aspect of it raw. You are 100% correct that you would think that would be an important element, cooking, but you're absolutely right. This is not saying that you can cook it. It is saying that if you wanted to eat it raw, you could potentially eat it raw. Because we allow, for example, we do allow chopping of food immediately before you eat something, you would potentially be able to chop it up and make yourself, I don't know whether you chop it that finely, but in any event, make yourself some kind of tartare, steak tartare. So that is the situation that we have to be talking about because of the exact point that you are making. You are absolutely right. It's an excellent point. Okay. So we have now found our source for how we know that Rabbi Yehuda is the source. Rabbi Yehuda is the author of our Mishnah. So now the Gemara shares a story that references the preceding discussion and touches on the exact topic that you had just raised in connection with the eating raw food. So Tana Kamei de Rab. So the following was taught in front of Rab. Hamavashal b'Shabbos b'shogeg yochal. That if you cook on Shabbos by accident, inadvertently, meaning you don't realize that you violated Shabbos, yochal, you can eat it. B'mezid lo yochal. But if you did it intentionally, you can't eat it. Umashtik le Rav. And Rav silenced the person. So my time of Mashtikle, why did he silence him? Because after all, this position, right, of B'shogeg Yochal, B'mezid Lo Yochal, that is explicitly Rebbe Meir's position. So why tell the guy that you can't say it? So Ilema Mishum Desfira like Rebbe Yehuda. All right, so you want to say that maybe Rav thinks like Rebbe Yehuda. The Taneh. Rebbe Meir, and this Tana was teaching like Rebbe Meir. But Mishum Desvira like Rebbe Yehuda, Manda Tana Rebbe Meir, Mishatekle. But would you quiet somebody just because he agrees or is teaching a different opinion? Of course not. V'od misavar la Rebbe Yehuda. Moreover, does Rav actually think like Rebbe Yehuda? V'hamar Rav Chanan bar Ami. Ki more lahu Rav l'talmidei, more lahu Rebbe Meir. When Rav would teach his students, he would teach them that the halacha is like Rebbe Meir. V'chidarish b'pirka, but when he taught the main discourse, the Shabbos discourse in public, darish Rebbe Yehuda. Well, then he would teach like Rebbe Yehuda, mishum amayaris, because he doesn't want people to get confused. and didn't want people to rely on Rebbe Meir's view. The Chitema, Tana Pirke, Tana Kame. And if you want to say that it was in public that this was happening and this was being taught in front of Rav in public, Atu Kuli Alma Latana Tzaite. Do people come to hear the person who's telling who's teaching over the brises? No, La'amora Tzaite. They are coming out, or they're going out to hear the person who is the main speaker, namely Rav. So the fact that the teacher of Bryce's was teaching something that Rav didn't agree with, he would have the opportunity to contradict him in his lecture, and everybody would understand that the statement was just as a point of jumping off and not necessarily a position that Rav would have agreed to. So as a result, Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Tana Shochet Tana Kamei de Rav. What we misremember the story. The story wasn't Bishogeg Yochal, B'mezid Lo Yochal. It was Bishochet Yochal and Hashochet B'Shab. It wasn't. Excuse me. So let me say that again. It wasn't Hamuvashel B'Shabbos. B'shogeg yochal b'mezid lo yochal. It was hash. It wasn't hamavashal b'Shabbos. It was hashochet b'Shabbos. And so that was the concern. So hashochet b'Shabbos b'shogeg yochal b'mezid lo yochal. That's not the halacha. Hashochet b'Shabbos b'shogeg yochal b'mezid lo yochal. Again, that's what he taught. So Amar lei. So Rav would say to the guy, Ma daitech, what are you thinking? Rebbe Meir, you think that Rebbe Meir will somebody who cooked it b'shogeg to eat it on Shabbos itself? Adkan. Now again, remember, Ken, that when we say it's kosher until the end of Shabbos, but you have to wait until the end of Shabbos. It's important to note our Mishnah is saying that you have to wait until the end of Shabbos is how we're understanding it. And so now we have the first person who's saying, well, maybe there's a way that you could eat it on Shabbos. So we're going to get to exactly your question. So you think it's like Rebbe Meir, Ad Kan Lo Kashri Rebbe Meir, Elabim Mavashal. But Rebbe Meir, when he made the statement about cooking and saying that it was kosher even on Shabbos itself, Doroi Lakos, because when you began the Shabbos, you could chew the item. It was chewable, and you could chew it raw. And so as a result, it isn't effectively also an aspect of muksa. Abal shoche de'ein roi lakos. But when it is when you slaughter it, and you're talking about an animal that's slaughtered, what existed before was not fit for chewing. Lo. And so as a result, even Rebbe Meir would say that in the shogeg case, you still need to wait until after Shabbos. And so as a result, that is why Rav silenced the teacher, because the teacher was saying that in a shogeg case, you could eat it immediately, when in fact, when it came to shchita, you have to always wait. Even Rebbe Meir would agree you have to wait until after Shabbos.
Well, what was Rui? You said something was Rui to eat it raw. What were you?
Not to eat it raw, to chew it raw.
Yeah, chew it. Okay. What was what?
The uncooked food. When in the case of mevashel, the uncooked food was fit to chew raw, and therefore
but it wasn't meat, was it?
It could be anything. Else. It could be anything, meaning it could be meat that was already shechted before Shabbos.
Oh.
The point is that when the only sin that's involved is bishul, the thing that existed at the beginning of Shabbos was fit for chewing, whereas the live animal is not fit for chewing. So v'ha masnisin to shochethu, and our Mishnah is talking about shchita. V'amar Rav Huna darash shchia bar Rav mishmei de Rav asura v'achilu liyoma v'nasvin chabrei l'meimar Rebbe Yehudahi ha Rebbe Meir Shari. But 1 second, if you think about the way we got to this at our very beginning, right? We said that our Mishnah is talking about shechita, and Rav Huna said that it's prohibited to eat during the day, and that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda, which implied that Rabbi Meir would disagree and say it would be permitted. Because after all, if it's also like Rabbi Meir, well, then we should say that it's like Rabbi Meir. No. Kishari Rabbi Meir, no. So when does Rabbi Meir permit it? He permits it as we turn to Tezvav Amabed, Kikon Shahaya Lo Chola Miba'od Yom. If there was a sick person during the day of Shabbos, even before Shabbos. And take a look at Rashi, very beginning of Rashi.
I asked this yesterday. Then it's not even really amazing. It's a pekuach nefesh.
We're going to get into that issue exactly right now. That's 100%. You were doing another case of forecasting. So Shahaya Lo Chola, top Rashi, Me'erev Shabbos. Just to be clear, that they were talking about where there was a chola from Erev Shabbos. And so as a result, Shahaya Lo Chola Miba'od Yom, meaning Erev Shabbos. So then, 1 second though, if you're going to tell me that there was a sick person, by time of the Rebbe Yehuda Dasser, why is Rebbe Yehuda now telling us in this Mishnah that it's prohibited to eat until after Shabbos? Given that there's somebody who is sick, it should be permitted immediately. No, Kagon Shahaya Lo Chola V'Hivri. Now the case is that there was somebody who was sick, but he got better. And so as a result, so let's take a look at Rashi, V'Hivri, Hayom B'Shabbos. He got better on Shabbos itself. So Isser Muktzah Leka. There is no longer an Isser of Muktzah for this animal because at the beginning of Shabbos, the animal was permitted to be shechted for the schola. But Daha Bein Hashmashos Chola Haya, because there was a sick person. Hilkach LeRebbe Meir, Delav Mashvi Shogeg De Isser Shabbos Shari, that he does not equate a shogeg to an Isser on Shabbos. So as a result, for him, it's going to be permitted. And because you're not benefiting from a prohibition, and there's no muksa. Ul Rabbi Yehuda, Aser, but Rabbi Yehuda would still say it's Aser. The Isser Shabbos, the Shogeg, Ika, the Hahevri. But when for Rabbi Meir, for Rabbi Yehuda, there is a prohibition of benefiting from even a violation of a shogeg. And so here's the story. Again, we have somebody who was sick before Shabbos, and therefore the animal is not muksa on Shabbos because you could potentially have slaughtered it on Friday night for this sick person. But then, Baruch Hashem, he got better. And so now, according to Rebbe Meir, whose only issue with slaughtering an animal and then using it as chew on Shabbos is the fact that it's muksa because before Shabbos it wasn't fit to be slaughtered. But here, because there was a sick person, it was fit to be slaughtered. So as a result, you can still use it as chew. But according to Rebbe Yehuda, because the guy got better before you slaughtered it, even though you slaughtered it by accident, we are going to say that that's still a prohibition, and it's therefore going to be something that is prohibited to eat and benefit from until after Shabbos and Kadesh Yasu. And so as a result, that's what our Mishnah is talking about, and that's why our Mishnah is only like Rebbe Yehuda and not like Rebbe Meir.
What does it mean to say it's not fit to be slaughtered? You said on Erev Shabbat, it was not fit to be slaughtered. He can,
not fit to be slaughtered on Erev, what?
He can shecht that on Erev Shabbat on Friday.
No. It was not fit to be slaughtered on Shabbos at the beginning of Erev Shabbos. If I thought I said the opposite, but let's go over the case again. The case of our Mishnah is there was somebody who was sick on Erev Shabbos and into the beginning of Shabbos. And so at the very beginning of Shabbos, this animal was fit to be slaughtered because there was a sick person. And so as a result, you could slaughter it at that very moment on Friday night and feed it to the sick person because the person is sick and we're not allowed to do things for a sick person. And so the animal is never muksa. Now, Baruch Hashem, on Shabbos day, the person gets better. And so as a result, there is we don't do a retroactive muksa. So the muksa issue is gone away and there is no muksa. But So now, according to Rebbe Meir, who does not say that a shogeg is considered like an isser with respect to whether or not you can benefit from it on Shabbos, he says that if you slaughter it in this situation, there's no muksa and there's no isser, you can benefit from it on Shabbos. But our Mishnah says that you cannot, and therefore it must be like Rebbe Yehuda, because Rebbe Yehuda says you're right that there is no muksa, but I say that because you slaughtered it b'shogeg when you had no right to do so because the person who was sick has gotten better, and so now you have a shogeg violation. That is a sufficient violation that makes everybody wait until after Shabbos to benefit from it, and that's the case of our Mishnah.
But why didn't he shecht it on Friday night? In that case, the person was sick. He shechted it Friday night.
No, that's not the case. That's not the case. He waited. He did not shecht it on Friday night. It is now Shabbos. He got better, and now he slaughtered it. That is the case of our Mishnah.
Because he thought he would shecht it. He thought the person was sick. Said, "Okay, I know I can shecht it tomorrow, Shabbat morning." The person got better, so then
correct.
But if he had shechted it Friday night,
and then everybody would agree. Everybody would agree that it would be totally permitted.
The person was still sick.
Correct. In fact, we're going to touch on that issue very shortly. My time of the Rebbe Yehuda to Asar, right? So, all right. Okay, so I already read that. Okay, so back into the Gemara. We're at 1, 2, 3, third line down. On Tedvav Bet, middle of the line, V'chihada Amar of Acha Bar Ada Amar Rav. So now that we've given, I'm sorry, let me scroll this because I realized that I did not scroll far enough. Here we go. And so now the Gemara is going to set forward some related rulings. So, Kihada Amar of Acha Bar Ada Amar Rav, V'amrei La Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Ada Amar Rav Hashochet Lechola B'Shabbos Asur Levari. That I'm sorry, I think I went too far. Hold on just a second. Oh, okay. So right here. Yes. So this is what we're up to. So right here. So and this is all like and this, right? Back into Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines to clarify what we're talking about. Kolomer hadu kimna de mishum iser muksa shatke Rav. The fact that Rav silenced the teacher because of the issue of muksa, saying that even Rebbe Meir would prohibit something slaughtered on Shabbos for chew because of the concept of muksa. Latana, that's why he silenced the teacher. The avagav de be'isr Shabbos shogeg hava. Even though he only violated the prohibition on Shabbos b'shogeg, hainu kihada amarav. It's like a statement that was made in the name of Rav, and so we're going to now see that statement. So back into the Gemara, third line, v'chihada amarav acha bar ada amarav, v'amrei la amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar ada amarav. So it was said in the name of Rav either by Rabbi Yitzchak bar ada or of Acha bar ada. If you slaughter for an ill person on Shabbos, asur levari, a healthy person is not allowed to eat it from it. Why? So Ashochet, back into Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down in Rashi. Ashochet lechola shenichla b'yom haShabbos. The key is that this is somebody who got sick on Shabbos day. So you're allowed to cook for that person who's sick because he's sick, but you cannot. Nobody else can eat it. Asur le'achol. Continuing on in Rashi, asur le'achol bari me'ota behema. A healthy person cannot eat from that animal bo bayom on that day. Ta'af al gaf de iser Shabbos leka. even though there is no prohibition of Shabbos to be pikuach nefesh docha. It's a Shabbos because the danger for the person who's sick overrides Shabbos, and we are allowed to therefore slaughter it. Iser muksa mia'ika. For a healthy person, there is still the prohibition of muksa. So even though muksa also gets overridden by the requirement to take care of the sick person, that's only for the sick person, not for anybody else. The bein hashmashos muksa having v'lo haisa ru'uya lishchat b'Shabbos. It was not fit to be slaughtered on Shabbos. Daha adayin lo hayachol, because there was no sick person. Yes. So this shows that this is very consistent with our statement that we had and with Rav's decision to silence the person who was teaching that hashochet b'shogeg on Shabbos, it's mutter to eat on Shabbos because it's not true. So hamavasha l'chola b'Shabbos. But when it comes to cooking for a sick person on Shabbos, mutter levari. A healthy person can eat it. My timer. Why can the healthy person eat it? Even something that was cooked for a sick person. Hi roy l'chos. Because before Shabbos, it was still fit to be chewed. V'hai ain't a roy l'chos. And whereas when the meat before it was slaughtered, it was not fit even for chewing. So Amarav Papa, Pamim Shashochem Mutter. There are times where actually you can even eat something that was slaughtered on Shabbos for a sick person. And Kagon Shahaya Lo Cholam Iba'od Yom, such as where there was a sick person from Friday. Because then when there was a sick person from Friday and he's still sick on Shabbos, well, now you can slaughter the animal, and it's not going to be muksa because it was not muksa beforehand, and it's not, and there's no isser because you're slaughtering it for a sick person. And there's a situation where mavashal usser, and there's a situation where cooking something could be prohibited, even though you do it for a sick person, and so the sick person can have it, but everybody else cannot. Why? Kagon shekatas lo delas, such as where you cut a gourd from the ground, and so as a result, you have violated Shabbos. So again, and it's where the sick person was not sick on Erev Shabbos, so the gourd was not fit to be cut on Erev Shabbos, so therefore it was muksa, and now even though your cutting of the gourd is permitted for the sick person, because the sick person, it's only going to be kosher for the sick person because he's sick. But for anybody else, the concept of muksa would still apply because it was muksa on Erev Shabbos. That is the general rule, where something that's muksa on Erev Shabbos, as Shabbos begins, is going to be muksa throughout all of Shabbos, and something that's not muksa on Erev Shabbos, when Erev Shabbos begins, is generally not going to be muksa for the rest of Shabbos. Okay, so that is that story. And so now the Gemara sets forth some related rulings. So first,
it's permitted to cook that gourd, though, right? For the sick person.
For the sick person, absolutely. But even though you can cook that gourd for the sick person, no healthy person's allowed to take from it, because for healthy people, it's considered muksa. Now, again, the healthy person, it's important to remember the kinds of muksa. The healthy person can prepare the gourd. And so it's not so muksa that he can't lift it up and do all the preparations that are necessary for it, but it is muksa with respect to his eating it. So, so as a result, he wouldn't be allowed to just move it for no reason. He can move it for the benefit of the sick person. That for sure he could do. And he can probably...
he can cook it.
And he could cook it, of course. Well, that's for the benefit of the sick person. He can do anything for the benefit of the sick person. The question is can he move it for its place or its thing? And I think not. I think that he cannot move it otherwise. He would have. It's considered like total. It's not muksa. Because it's not a klisha malakta le'isser, and so as a result, it should be totally muksa and not movable pretty much for any purpose other than for the benefit of the sick person. Okay, so Amar Rav Dimi from Neharda. So Rav Dimi from Neharda says, Hilchas shochet l'chola b'Shabbos. A person is allowed to slaughter for an ill person on Shabbos. Mutter levari ba'umsa. Once that's slaughtered, a healthy person, and again, we're talking about a situation where the person was ill Erev Shabbos. Rashi specifically tells us it's Rashi 1 from the bottom of the narrow lines. it's 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, about to 24 lines up in the Rashi. We're talking about somebody who's sick on that day. What is umsa? Rashi tells us it's lakos, it's chewing. So you can chew it. So if you have a sick person who is sick on Erev Shabbos, and you cook and you slaughter the animal for them on Shabbos when the person is still sick, the raw meat can be chewed on by a healthy person. It's not muksa. It's not muksa, and there was no violation. There is no problem with chewing it. My timer, what's the reason that we say that that's okay? Well, you can't create even the olive volume of meat that the sick person needs without slaughtering the entire animal. So ki kashakit. So when you go ahead and you slaughter the animal, you're slaughtering it for the person who's sick. However, but when it comes to cooking for a sick person on Shabbos, asur levari, a healthy person is not supposed to eat from it. Gzeira shema yarba bishvilo, because we're worried that when it comes to cooking, you might add a little bit of extra food, saying, "Oh, I'll just cook a little extra just to make sure the sick person has it." And now, in the end, he doesn't need it, and so I'm going to end up eating it. And so we're worried that you're going to think that way and do that action. And indeed, of course, on Yontif, right? On Yontif, we permit that action in certain
Because the
circumstances.
guests may come. You may guess.
Exactly, because the guests may come. Exactly. And but on when it comes to cooking on Shabbos for a sick person, we do not allow the eating of that food because of this gzeira.
Why is he
Okay.
allowed to chew the raw food though? There's a healthy person.
What's the prohibition that you're concerned about?
Well, why isn't that muksa for him? The healthy person. Why can he
It's
chew? Why is
It's
he allowed to
that's
chew?
a right. So that's exactly the point. That's why we have to say that this is the sick person for whom it was shechted was sick on Erev Shabbos, and so as a result, the animal was not muksa because on Erev Shabbos because it could have been slaughtered for this sick person.
So when was it slaughtered? Friday afternoon? Friday
No,
morning?
slaughtered on Shabbos.
Friday night?
Friday night, Shabbos day, whenever it was slaughtered, when the person was still sick, and the person is still sick. And so as
Right.
a result, because you can't slaughter and create a small piece of meat, you have to slaughter the whole animal. As a result, we're not going to prohibit you from chewing on it. You can't cook it and eat it, but for chewing on it, you can chew on that piece of meat. Will allow you to do that because it's not muksa. Because on Erev Shabbos, it was set aside for the sick person, so it's not muksa. And when you slaughtered it, the person was still sick, so there was no violation of Shabbos. So there's no reason to prohibit it, and there's no reason to make a gzeira about it because nobody is slaughtering extra animals to chew on. Because once you slaughter the first animal for the sick person, you got more than enough meat there. And so as a result, we're not worried about somebody saying, "Oh, now you know what? Maybe I'm going to slaughter an extra animal on Shabbos for the sick person." Nobody's concerned about that. And so as a result, the rabbis don't make a gzera. Whereas when it comes to
Anyone could eat
cooking,
it then. Anyone could eat it.
anybody could chew it. That's exactly right. That's what
Well,
Kufar is saying.
well,
Anybody
chewing,
can chew it.
then chewing, they're eating it, right? Or they're
No,
just
no, no
chewing
difference. Eating it raw, that would be also okay. And so now
because
when
there
it
are
comes,
people that just chew
yeah,
cocoa and then they spit it out.
yes, 100%, and that would be totally fine too. But the point
But
is,
here
is
they
that
can eat it. They can swallow it.
correct, they can swallow it. And why is it different from cooking? Because when it comes to cooking, everything that we just said still applies. It's no longer muksa because you're cooking for a sick person. And so even Erev Shabbos, he was sick. And so Erev Shabbos, this raw food was not muksa. And now on Shabbos, when it was cooked, it was done in a mutter way because it was cooked for a sick person. So maybe you think, "Oh, it's totally fine. We're okay. Everything's wonderful." So, but the answer is no, we're worried. There's a gzeira, so we're not going to let you. There's a gzeira that we're going to say, don't do it because we are going to, we're worried that you might cook extra and that will be a problem.
So
All
it's a
right.
gezerah de Rabbanan, right?
Correct. Gzeira de Rabbanan.
Well, the writer might be permitted to eat it.
100% the right would be permitted. That's what we're saying. We're saying it's the right is clearly permitted. Okay, hashochet. When it comes to slaughtering, so now we go to our Mishnah. Hashochet b'magal yad. If you slaughter with a hand sickle, and the Rashi tells us that this is a knife that is smooth on one side and serrated on the other. Bitsor, a flint. That's a kind of rock. Uva kana, or a reed. Shchitaso kshera. It's the slaughter is kosher. Hakol shochatin ula olam shochatin uva kol shochatin. That and you can slaughter with anything. Anybody can slaughter. You can slaughter at any time, and you can slaughter with anything. So chutz mimagal katsir, except with a harvesting sickle, hamegera v'hashinayim v'hatziporin, and you can't do with a saw or a teeth or a nail, mimnei shehein chonkin, because they aren't going to cut. They are going to strangle. They're going to end up being using pressure as opposed to the smooth cutting. So our Mishnah began hashochet. The implication of hashochet is hashochet the avad in, yes, with respect to b'di aved, that once you've done it, it's going to be kosher. But lechatchila lo, you shouldn't do it initially. So bishlam b'magal yad, I understand when it comes to the sickle, why you can't do it lechatchila dilma asilimebad beidach giza, because maybe you'll use the wrong side and you'll use the serrated side, and therefore it's not going to be a kosher slaughter. Elatzor the kind of lechatchila lo. But what's wrong with using the flint, the stone, or the reed? Or minhu. In fact, there is a brisa that says that it's all permitted. Bekol shochtin, you can slaughter with anything. Bein bitzor, even with the flint. Bein bischuchas, whether even with glass. Bein bikrumis, even with a stem, bikrumis shalkana, or even a stem of a reed. So that's exactly our case. So what this brisa seems to say is clear that it's okay. So lo kasha, kan betalosh, kan b'chamechubar. One is when it's attached to the ground, and one when it is not attached to the ground. To Amarav Kahana Hashochip Mechubar Lakarka. When something is attached to the ground, Rebbe Posel Rebbe Chia Maksha. Rebbe says that it's invalid. The shechita is not good, and Rebbe Chia says that it is. Ad kan lo kal machshir Rebbe Chia elad b'diavad. And even when Rebbe Chia says that it's okay, it's only b'diavad. Aval lechatchila beforehand, it wouldn't be kosher. So b'mayu kimta. So how have you now set up our Mishnah? It seems like our Mishnah is Rebbe Chia v'diavad. Our Mishnah is like Rebbe Chia and b'diavad. Eloha Tanya. But 1 second, there's another brisa, b'kol hashochatin, that you can slaughter with anything, bein b'talish, bein b'mechor, whether it's attached, whether it's not. Bein shasakin lamala, v'tzavar behema lamata, whether the knife is above and the neck's below. Bein shasakin lamata, v'tzavar behema lamala, whether the knife is below and the neck is above. Mani, who is that author? Lo Rebbe, below Rebbe Chia. It doesn't go according to anybody. Because Rebbe Chia, if you say that it's Rebbe Chia, di avid in, lechatchila lo. Rebbe Chia says that it's only good b'di eved, not and not lechatchila. Whereas this Mishnah, this brisa, says b'kol shochtin, implying even lechatchila. And Rebbe, and you want to tell me it's Rebbe, diavad namilo. Even b'diavad, he says that it's prohibited. So la'olam Rebbe Chia, really it's Rebbe Chia, va'afilu lechatchila, and really even lechatchila Rebbe Chia would allow. V'hai dekamifliki b'diavad. Where do they argue about in the b'diavad, and that where Rebbe Chia and Rebbe argue about, it's only in the b'diavad case. L'hodiacha kocho de Rebbe, to tell you how powerful Rebbe's prohibition is, to say that Rebbe says that it's even b'diavad, it's prohibited. Ve'ela masnisin tekatani hashochet. But 1 second, our Mishnah, which says hashochet di'avid in lechatchila lo. 1 second, our Mishnah now doesn't go according to anybody. Mani lo Rebbe v'lo Rebbe Chia, because Rebbe Chia afilu lechatchila. If it's according to Rebbe Chia, then even if it was lechatchila, it should be permitted. And we've now said that the Rebbe Chia says that it's permitted whether it's lechatchila or b'diavad. But our Mishnah, we're saying, is only talking about b'diavad, and lechatchila, it's not permitted. And Rebbe, and if you're telling me it's Rebbe, diavad namilo, even b'diavad, he says that it's prohibited. Ella, so la'olam, Rabbi Chia, va'afiu lechatchila. Really, it is Rabbi Chia, and our Mishnah is teaching even lechatchila it's permitted. Meaning, really, Rabbi Chia says even lechatchila it's permitted. Umasnisin to Katani Hashochet, Rebbe. And our Mishnah is like Rebbe. Oh, 1 second. Kasha the Rebbe, ad the Rebbe. 1 second. So now we have an inconsistency within Rebbe because in one place, namely our Mishnah, he says that B'di Eved, it's kosher to slaughter with the rock and all these other things, B'di Eved. And in the other Brisa, he said it was not. And we said that that case was a case also of B'di Eved. And so as a result, it seems like Rebbe should say, is inconsistent. Lo kashya. Kan b'mechubar mikikaro. Kan b'talosh l'sof chibro. No, the situation is the following. When it's talking about one situation is talking about when it was originally attached and it's always been attached, and therefore in that situation, Rebbe would say even b'diavad, it's not going to be kosher. Kan b'talosh u'b'sof chibro. And in the situation where it's okay is when it was at some point detached and now you reattached it to the ground. And so as a result, the fact that it was detached at some point means that as a result, Rebbe would say in that situation, even though now it's reattached to the ground, because it was once detached, it's going to be kosher. So as a result, Ellie's going to pick up from there, although I had prepared a little bit further on this. I'm going to stop there. Wish you a very good Shabbos, and God willing, Ellie, I know that Ellie did a recording that began right where I'm leaving off, and so I wish you a good Shabbos. The Gemara is going to talk about a case of a wheel machine. And so if you're interested in that, stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. It is already up and available on the website. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. Next week, I'll be teaching Monday through Thursday in person and on Zoom at 7:45 a.m. On Friday, I'll be teaching, it's Yontif, I'll be teaching at 6:30 p.m., an hour before Mincha at 7:30. Wishing you a wonderful, wonderful day.